This is where it gets fun. We're talking about doing some Satin Stitch Applique on the Pfaff Quilt Ambition 630. Now, I love decorative stitches. We do so much of it in our Pfaff Stitching Cosmos online course. I hope you'll check out the links below this YouTube video where you can watch 10 videos for free. So we use the stitch number 7 is a built-in satin stitch on this machine. Now, most people think a zigzag is what to pick, then you just bring it closer together in stitch length. But on this machine, there is an even better stitch. The way it forms is it allows the stitches to look even prettier. So stitch number 7 is automatically fairly close together. Now we might choose to shorten that up a little bit closer so it's a little bit more dense, but that all depends on the thread you have selected. If you're using a fairly thin thread, then yes, we'll probably drop that stitch length a hair further from 0.8 down to 0.6. Now one thing I will note on this machine is it starts off with a stitch width of 6 millimeters wide. That is really wide. And tell you the truth, I usually don't need a satin stitch that big, so the first thing I'm going to have us do is let's go ahead and bring it down to somewhere in the 3.5 range, just so it's not as big. Now it does ask for foot number 2A. Make sure that you add stabilizer. Our feed dogs are up and our tension, look at this. We have a 3.0 tension. That's a lot lower than like normal settings. So that means that the stitches are going to pull around to the back side, because if it's looser up top, then the bobbin is tighter and those stitches are going to pull to the back, make it look really smooth when we stitch. This picture of the feed dogs up reminds me that we just finished sewing on buttons in the last video and my feed dogs are still down. So that's another reason to go ahead and look through and see what is recommended. Let's go ahead and take off the foot. Make sure the IDT is not engaged, since the 2A foot is not an IDT foot, no groove in the back, and go ahead and attach that to the machine. Now with the applique, one thing people do like to do is see where they're going. And this foot has a nice clear opening. It has actually a lot of red lines on it to help us for starting, stopping, and guiding, but they do make this foot without anything blocking your view to the needle, like an open toe foot, which is actually my preference for if I'm doing a lot of applique, so I can see really close up where I am guiding the fabric. But for today, we're going to use what the machine recommends and what you already have with your included accessories. The goal is to know where to guide the foot. So here's the little trick. As I've made the stitch width narrower, I want the edge of the zigzag to just barely stitch off the raw edge of the square I'm sewing on. So as I stitch, I'm going to be looking at a couple of things. I'm looking to see if I've got a nice solid satin stitch. I'm also looking to see if I like how wide it is, and I can even do a little adjustment with width while I'm sewing. So if I want to see just what it looks like as I go a little bit bigger, I can see what that's going to look like. And how about just a hair shorter so we can see the difference? As long as the machine is still moving the fabric through without you having to help it, then you know you have not gone too close together where that satin stitch would pile up. So just keep that in mind as you're testing it out. And oh, look at that. Look how pretty that is. Now here is the result I'm looking at. It did make a little bit wider, but then right here, from here to here, did you see how pretty that satin stitch is? By dropping the stitch length down to 0.6, it totally closed it up. And wow, that looks so much better than just, I mean, this didn't look bad, but now that I see this, this would be what I'd want than the little bit of see-through of the green fabric. So adjusting your stitch width for the proportion of what you're going around. If you're doing something a little bit bigger, yes, a bigger satin stitch, wider satin stitch. But if you're doing something more small, you want to proportion it down. Little practice and wow, your satin stitch applique will be professional looking on this machine.